Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. We're going to be refuting Maajid Nawaz, a liberalistic secularist, on the topic "The Burkini is wrong, but so is the ban." Maajid Nawaz, he's commenting on the France banning the Burkini. And in this discussion, we're going to expose some of the fallacies that Maajid has made. And in doing so, I'm going to first begin to say to all of the viewers, especially the non-Muslim ones, that Maajid Nawaz, according to mainstream Islam, is an apostate. So when he goes around claiming that he's a Muslim, he's a liberalistic, he's a secular, there is no such thing. Okay, there is no such thing as a liberalistic secularist Muslim. If you don't follow the Quran and the Sunnah and don't believe as it's understood by the Prophet ﷺ, and if you want to claim that this book is not supposed to be applied today in our modern world and it needs reform, that's supposed to stay in the 16th century and back in 1400 years ago, it's not supposed to be. I mean, you are basically an apostate, an infidel. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, oh, you're just an extremist Muslim. How dare you call him an infidel? Well, Protestants also call Jehovah's Witness non-Christians. Don't they? They call them infidels. They call them apostates. They say these aren't the followers of Christ. So why is it that I'm being labelled an extremist because I say that he's a non-Muslim? Allah says in the Quran, whoever rejects one verse of the Quran is as if he has rejected all of the Quran. So I'm only following what the Quran is telling me. If Maajid is basically saying, and you'll see throughout this video, where he will reject the notion of the hijab in the Quran, and he says it needs to be reformed. So if he's doing that, then he's going clearly against the Quran. Let's go.
In fact, that the Burkini is indeed a sad symbol of Islam today going backwards on gender issues. So I cannot personally, as a self-described reforming secular liberal Muslim, I cannot personally endorse the notion that there is something to be ashamed of in the female form. I know that within my own Muslim communities, men can perfectly walk down the beach, taking their tops off, baring their legs, and feel absolutely no shame in the male form. And so,
well, obviously they have biological differences, Maajid Nawaz. Of course, a woman can't just take off her top. I mean, unless you believe in total nakedness where a woman can show her breast. Do you believe that? Even in the secular world, Maajid Nawaz, that a woman can't just take everything off. She'll be arrested if she shows her boobies. Now, wouldn't she? So this notion that, there's clearly a biological difference between men and women. I mean, for him to even conflate the two together, a man's chest and a woman's chest, I mean, it's just absurd and ridiculous. I mean, he goes on to say that, Muslim men can take off their top and show their legs. Well, of course, there are biological differences. And in fact, the Muslim man can't just wear whatever he wants. He can't just go with tight Speedos. There are even restrictions on the Muslim man where he has to wear shorts that are up to his knees. He can't go above the navel and so forth. So even men have certain restrictions. We don't see Maajid Nawaz going after the Quran or the Hadith, which actually describes the whereabouts and the limitations of what he can actually wear. But it seems that he just wants to liberate Muslim women and he wants to forget about the men, which is quite funny. And he talks about the Burkini being, a bad symbol of oppression and so forth, and of course there are guidelines. I mean, to say that it is a sign of oppression, it's basically saying that Islam forces a person like a robot to obey. I mean, you don't have to obey, right? You could be a sinful Muslim. I mean, he wants to bring this notion that, there's this culture, there's this religion, and Islam is forcing that individual to put those things on. No, that person is, by their own will, choosing to wear that sort of garment. So you can't call it forcing them. When you're saying that that individual is listening to the Quran and they believe that is morally acceptable. I mean, do you accuse your secular government, your liberalistic government, for forcing men and women to wear clothes when they go to work? Do you then blame the secular government for forcing and impinging upon people's rights, for wearing a certain uniform and a dress code? For instance, if you were to work at McDonald's, that comes with a certain dress code. Do you say, oh, McDonald's is forcing these workers to wear what they wear? No. Those workers have accepted that this is the dress code for that workplace. You have accepted as a liberalistic person to accept your government's policies on what is morally right. You can't just go bare naked in the streets. Of course, Maajid Nawaz goes to some fancy places like strip clubs, for example. I mean, this is the man that wants to reform Islam, but he was caught going to a strip club while he was engaged with his fiancée. And he later came on and said, oh, well, I could go because apparently his fiancée agreed to it. So notice the moral differences. This is a man that's claiming that the hijab is wrong and the burqa is wrong, but he goes to strip clubs and he sees everything in front of him. So we understand that this guy's already lost his shame. He's become desensitized. So of course he's going to have a problem with the hijab and say that's unprogressive. To him, what is progression is when a woman goes naked and presents her vagina and her breasts to Maajid Nawaz at a dance club, completely naked. This is apparently the progressive, liberalistic view. This is how you become progressed. I mean, to me, that's not becoming progressed. That's going backwards. Because in the animal evolutionary kingdom, that's how they didn't dress. So when you say you become progressed when you become more naked, you're not becoming more progressive, actually. You're going backwards. You're going back into time, back into ancient animalistic kind. Let's continue.
I feel somewhat disturbed at the medieval notion that the female form, a woman's hair, a woman's legs are something to be ashamed of, and that in fact even that modesty equates to covering up the female form, as if somehow a woman who doesn't cover her hair is immodest. So
no, Maajid, no one says that. No one says that a woman who doesn't cover her hair is immodest. Okay, we may say that a woman is just becoming rebellious towards God. That's basically it. Okay, when the Quran talks about modesty, it's more about the rest of her body and so forth. Okay. So yes, a woman can actually be still modest for showing her hair, and there are modest women who do that. I mean, they could keep I've seen actually some women who are, they reveal their hair, but they're actually very humbly and honest and respectful, and they basically do their best to cover themselves and act modestly. We're not disputing that. But, the covering of their hair is basically honesty towards God, to respect his laws. So that's why it's part of that type of modesty. But it doesn't mean that a woman who uncovers her hair is immodest. Basically, the modesty part has to do with the rest of her body. And I'm pretty sure that even the Western Hemisphere, the secular hemisphere, believes that a woman who, dresses very skimpy is generally a immodest person through their behavior. And, that is even evident even amongst the secularists and the liberalists, and this is why there is a difference of opinion even amongst them. And, if a woman was to completely go naked and walk in the street, even the secularists and the liberalists are going to turn around and say, oh, this lady is just a immodest person. So, Maajid, you got to quit playing on the double standards of immodesty. I mean, you guys even have your own standards. I mean, your liberalistic friends do anyway. I'm not too sure about you because obviously you visit strip clubs, so I can't really, judge you on your modesty. Your modesty is, looking at women who are pretty much butt naked. Let's continue.
That the Burkini ban, or the desire to wear a Burkini is a symbol of Islam today, going backwards on gender issues. However, and here's the but, France's ban on this Burkini, I think, is also a sad symbol of liberalism today, going backwards in response. And so I don't think it has to be a zero-sum game. I think there's an intelligent position.
Okay, so I agree with him there. It is, and he's rightfully pointed that out, that yes, the secularists and the liberalists actually show their double face. They say they are the champions of human rights, liberalism, and so forth. And on one hand, they're demonstrating and saying, oh, it's Islam, it's the cultural pressures that are forcing women to wear what they are. But then on the other side, we're seeing the cultural pressures of the liberalistic view, because they believe in a particular point of morality where they culturally also got their own agenda, and they're now trying to strip women off from wearing the hijab and burqa. And Maajid obviously rightly points that out, that hey, there's also double standards and hypocrisy on the liberalistic side for doing that too, which I actually agree with him on that at least.
Yeah, for liberals to take. That intelligent position is to continue on the march of progressive views to say that a woman should have the right to show her body without feeling ashamed, without the cultural and societal pressures that come from within her own community that tell her somehow it's immodest if she wants to feel the wind on her hair, that somehow there is something licentious about a woman's free-flowing hair, the wind blowing through it, the sunshine.
Let's just cut his rant off there. There's this notion that Muslim women are like nuns. They need to even wear their dress in bed, which is immoral and wrong, of course. But this notion that a woman in Islam can't basically go out in the public sphere and let the wind blow through her hair is ridiculous. I mean, I go camping with my wife, I go fishing, and I go to the parks, and I go to the beaches. We actually pick our destinations when we go. If we know that there is a back beach somewhere where it's designated, then sure, she loves it. She loves taking off her veil and she loves going for a swim. There's no problem in that. So yes, there are certain restrictions that a woman has to cover her hair, but it doesn't mean she has to cover it everywhere. She could go into her backyard. She could basically uncover herself there, have a nice suntan. She can uncover herself amongst women. So this notion that she's trapped in this hijab because of this cultural pressure, this is just washing from Maajid Nawaz. He's exaggerating. I mean, I go with my wife to the beach and we find a place where it's designated, it's private, she gets to take it off, and basically she enjoys herself. So this notion of Muslim women being entrapped by this cultural pressure, this is Maajid Nawaz, who has this really perverted image of Islam, this terrorism, cultural shock, radicalization. So, I mean, this person is not being honest. He needs religious education. And Maajid Nawaz admitted that he's uneducated in Islam. When he was caught at a strip club, he came out publicly and he said, don't look at me as a role model Muslim. He actually admitted he's not devout himself. Yet this man that claims he's not devout himself tries to tell us what Islam is and isn't. He wants to reform Islam, yet he admits himself he's not a devout Muslim. So how am I supposed to believe in Maajid Nawaz's liberalistic Islam when he himself tells me he's not a devout Muslim? So I honestly pray that Maajid comes to Islam, accepts Islam, the real Islam, and not, of course he won't do that, because he has his own hypocrisy and agenda to basically destroy Islam. All right, we already know this. I mean, even in the front row of the Sahaba, when the Prophet used to pray, there used to be people who used to come to Fajr prayer, who used to pray at the front row. Okay, and the Prophet Muhammad actually used to point to these people and say, you're hypocrites. These are the hypocrites. Don't believe these people as being Muslim. So if people used to pray with the Prophet Muhammad and they were hypocrites, Maajid Nawaz, what does that make Maajid Nawaz? What does that make Maajid Nawaz? These people who are clearly trying to change Islam are the hypocrites. That's it. They're basically the hypocrites. They know that Islam is growing. They know they can't stop it. So they want to reform it and change it into something else.
On her skin and her enjoying the feel of that warmth and the glow of the sun. That somehow there's something immodest in this. I think liberals have every right to reserve their own right to criticise this view that is rooted in medieval understandings, medieval notions of femininity and masculinity, while defending any woman's right to dress how she likes.
Okay,